Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles. We're back on the North American server today. As usual, you can tell because of the chat, although unfortunately on this occasion you'll be able to tell because in just a couple of seconds the chat is all going to be about the politics. I do apologise for that, nothing I can do about it. Please do your best to ignore it. Don't worry, the chat is going to get interesting and dramatic at some point during the course of this battle, and I will draw your attention when it happens because, well, I mean, this isn't going to be a boring game, absolutely not, quite the opposite in fact, but the chat's going to get really good too, and for all the wrong reasons. Anyway, this is Swamp Beast in the Tier 10 US Navy heavy cruiser, the USS Des Moines. The Des Moines is the longest serving Tier 10 cruiser in the whole of World of Warships. It has been around right from the start, and this is a 10-year-old game, and it's been around largely without any changes. It's just that good. It's been in the game since there were only 2 Tier 10 cruisers in the entire game, and the Japanese one isn't in the game anymore. The Zhao actually replaced it shortly after launch, or possibly shortly before launch, during the beta. I don't know, but either way, the Des Moines has been around the longest. And the Des Moines still got it. Despite an arguable 10 years of power creep, the Des Moines is just as good now as the day it first set sail. And it existed. It's a real ship. They didn't make anything up. This is a heavy cruiser with auto-loading ammunition hoists, which explains the terrifying 5-second reload on these 9 8-inch guns. And that's before you start taking into account something like adrenaline rush. It is not unusual, by the time a battle's halfway over and people have started to take a bit of damage and various different buffs have kicked into effect, it is not unusual to see Des Moines with 4-second or slightly less than 4-second reloads on these extremely potent 8-inch guns. And of course, as the poster child of the US Navy heavy cruisers, it does of course also have radar, which means that extremely suspicious looking smokescreen over there, or the Shimakaze who's laying it, is about to have a bad day. Although, not necessarily. I mean, a Des Moines can do a substantial amount of damage to a destroyer of any size or description in the few seconds that it is visible, but the Shimakaze is only going to be visible for a few seconds, because there it is, 10 kilometers. He was right at the outer limit of detection. It's almost like the Shimakaze knew what he was doing. So he's managed to get away with it, although not completely unscathed. Meanwhile, because this is the Two Brothers map and certain things in life are inevitable, somebody on the team have just noticed that there are 2 enemy heavy cruisers YOLOing the middle, and advising the rest of the team to push the flanks hard, because the enemy are now going to be weaker due to the 2 idiots charging the middle in cruisers right at the start of the battle. Swamp Beast takes a big hit there from the Preußen, but it's the only big hit he's going to take, since the Preußen is now tucked in so close to the island that the Preußen can no longer shoot over it. He doesn't have the gun elevation to clear the island. Swamp Beast, of course, has no such issues with the Des Moines 8-inch high explosive shells at this kind of range. Although you'll notice he's going to leave the Preußen alone for the moment because he's switched to the armour piercing. Why do you suppose that is? It's not for the Preußen. It's for those 2 cruisers coming up the middle. See, this is why you don't charge up the middle at the beginning of the battle. Not right at the beginning of the battle, and definitely not in a cruiser, because as you come out of that channel, you're giving broadside to everybody on both flanks of the channel, and the entire enemy team are going to be on both flanks of the channel because we're less than 4 minutes in, and they haven't had time to disperse to the flanks properly yet. I'll say at least this much for the enemy Takahashi and Napoli. I mean, they're not quite dumb enough to do exactly that. They're still lurking around in the channel itself, which is no doubt quite disappointing for Swamp Beast because he does have the super heavyweight 8-inch armour piercing ready to spank their broadsides as they came charging out, which they have failed to do. So instead he's going to go in there after them. Now they've already taken a substantial amount of damage, because of course they did. They sailed straight up the middle right at the start. They didn't even pause at the natural elbow in the channel, and they don't have any form of concealment. But they're about to take a lot more. Meanwhile, you can start getting your popcorn ready, not just because of what Swamp Beast is about to do, but the drama is just occurring in chat, with the friendly Ibuki raising serious questions about the standard of gameplay being performed by the friendly Shimakaze. And honestly, he's not wrong. But he is just not going to shut up about it. Like, ever. So sit back, grab your popcorn, and get ready to be entertained by Airshark, there goes the Napoli, in the Ibuki, and Cletus, and there goes the Takahashi. Airshark in the Ibuki, who will be joined by Cletus in the Smolensk that didn't just get sunk by the Preußen, as they debate the relative pros and merits of the gameplay of the Shimakaze, who has just launched torpedoes at the Napoli and Takahashi that have both just been sunk, proving that while he is going to be a colossal dick about it, Airshark in the Ibuki does at least, yep, there they are, he does at least have a point. And I will be taking pains to point out the positioning of the Shimakaze. Hang on, where is he? Yep, there he is. Just abandoned the flank to come and torpedo two ships that had already been sunk down the middle of the channel. Pay attention to the minimap. I'll try to remember to point out exactly where he is and what he's doing, because honestly, the Ibuki does kind of have a point. But anyway, back to Swamp Beast here in the Des Moines. So he's hydroed, which must mean Hindenburg. Yep, there he is, revealed by the radar. Hindenburg's taking a bit of a paddling. He's on fairly low health. He wouldn't be dumb enough to come out and give broadside to an auto-loading heavy cruiser with 8-inch armor-piercing shells, would he? Yeah, he would. And the only possible reason for that would be because he must have launched torpedoes.
Enemy cruiser destroyed.
Hydro is running, but obvious torpedoes are kind of obvious. Yep, sure enough, there they are. Yeah. Now, the radio location indicator is actually pointing in the other direction.
Thank you.
That must be the enemy Kremlin. Yep, there he is. There is an enemy destroyer out there too, the Jaeger. And the Jaeger's torpedoes, well, it gets a lot of them, and they reload very, very quickly. So he's going to... he doesn't need to fully emerge from the channel in order to start taking the enemy cap. Well, I say the enemy cap. This isn't a standard battle, it's domination. There are 4 cap circles, but this is traditionally the enemy one. It's the one that the enemy team at least start with, in the same way that his team have started with the cap circle at Bravo up to the north, which is the only cap circle that they currently hold. This isn't good. At the moment they're actually ahead on points, and that's due to the kill advantage. Largely thanks to the 2 idiots and the cruisers who rushed the middle at the start. But don't worry, that's going to change. Meanwhile, honestly, this Kremlin does an amazingly good job of staying alive for the next minute or two, because basically everybody on this flank who can is focusing their fire. Although admittedly that's not nearly as many ships focusing the Kremlin as it could have been, because the Condor and the Christopher Colombo have both abandoned that flank to come and follow Swamp Beast here down the middle. The Shimakaze, if you look at the minimap, is no use to anybody alive. He's struggling to evacuate to the north of the friendly Pommern, and the Ibuki, who's the only friendly ship remaining on the same flank as that Kremlin, rather than shooting at him, is instead demanding that everybody report the Shimakaze. Honestly, looking at his position on the map, the Ibuki that is, not the Shimakaze, he's got a Novosibirsk on one side, a Yoshino on the other. You'd think he'd have better things to do than complain about his teammates, but well, clearly he has a different set of priorities, and if that Novosibirsk and Yoshino and the Yamagiri with them have anything to say about it, yep, they've taken him out. Just at the same time as Swamp Beast finishes off the Kremlin. So the good news, now that the Ibuki no longer has to worry about steering the ship and firing the guns anymore, although it's questionable how much of that he was doing before his demise, he can at least now devote himself full-time to complaining about the Shimakaze in chat. And he's already started. And soon, when the Smolensk dies, he's going to be able to devote himself full-time to arguing with the Ibuki about it, also in chat. Well, I mean, obviously in chat. Where else was he going to do it? Meanwhile, with the Golden Lion and the Smolensk attempting to hold down the corner against the enemy ships pushing around this eastern flank, Swamp Beast is attempting to push around and give them support from the rear. And he is spotted, which almost certainly means Yamagiri, which also almost certainly means that we're about to get some hot, sweaty radar action. He's not doing this alone, of course. He just needs the Smolensk and the Golden Lion to stay alive for long enough for himself and the Condor to sneak around the flank here. Well, they're not sneaking anywhere because, yep, sure enough, Yamagiri. But split the attention of the Yoshino and the Novosibirsk long enough for them to kill them, secure this flank, and then turn their attention elsewhere.
Torpedoes, direct front.
Did somebody say torpedoes?
Torpedoes, direct front.
Oh, and he also sank the Yoshino, which means it's real bad news for the Novosibirsk. He's now caught in a crossfire between 4 ships. I mean, technically, he's also within torpedo range of the Shimakaze, all the way up there to the north, but I don't think he really has much to worry about from him. Meanwhile, Swamp Beast, with the Novosibirsk occupied and the guns pointing elsewhere, he chooses this moment to pull a turn, knowing that he's not going to get his broadside paddled. There goes the radar. Now, the Yamagiri, it is a super ship. Technically it's tier 11, and as such it does get a couple of funny buttons and part pieces, but they're all based around getting to choose which type of torpedo it fires, and having a burst fire mode for the guns. What it does not get is a torpedo reload booster. Now, having the burst fire ability for the guns isn't a bad thing, and it certainly gives the Yamagiri an edge over a lot of other destroyers. But even if it had been a Haruga mode, there is no way it's beaten a Des Moines in a close-range gunfight. So the Yamagiri goes down, and that's kill number 5, Kraken Unleashed. Meanwhile, you can see the... well, you can see a couple of things. I think those are Jaeger torpedoes, the red ones. And those white ones are... yep, that's the Shimakaze trying to torpedo the Novosibirsk from 20 kilometers away. Which is what the Ibuki's crying about. Now, unfortunately, the Smolensk has gone down. So he is now able to join the Ibuki in chat. Except he's demanding that everybody report the Ibuki for reporting the Shimakaze's position to the enemy team. Something that the Ibuki 100% absolutely definitely did do. Now remember that, because that's going to be important later for all you fans of chat drama. Meanwhile, Swamp Beast attempting to finish off the Novosibirsk and come to the aid of the Golden Line over there, because in case you hadn't noticed, his team are more than 200 points behind, due mostly to, well, look at where the Shimakaze is. He's not exactly helping his case, is he? As the Golden Line finishes off the Novosibirsk, but unfortunately the enemy Shimakaze, using his guns no less, finishes off the Golden Lion. So the kills are even, but due to the fact that most of the rest of Swamp Beast's team are either trying to score torpedo hits from the comfort and safety of the map border, or are arguing about it in chat, the team have spent the majority of the game with only 1 cap circle under their control. They briefly held 2, and right now they don't have any, although Swamp Beast is trying to flip 1. And the Christopher Colombo, the surviving battleship, and the only real surviving teammate that Swamp Beast has, because the Shimakaze is no use to the team alive. I don't know who he's trying to torpedo there, but top tip, if you're trying to flush out anybody in the cap circle at Bravo, get closer than 20 kilometers before you launch the torpedoes to do it. There he goes again. Well, due to a combination of all of these factors, the team are now almost 300 points behind. Well, as the drama continues to unfold in chat, and as Swamp Beast is about to take this 1 cap circle and at least have some points continuing to come in, I think Swamp Beast is guessing that since the enemy team know exactly where the Christopher Columbus is, and they only have a rough idea of where he is, that those 2 enemy destroyers, the Shimakaze from the north and the Jaeger from the south, it's probably the Jaeger that just flipped that southern cap, are about to spring a torpedo sandwich using the Christopher Columbus as the filling. And in fact they have. The Shimakaze must have just landed some torpedoes on him, and he's died from the flooding, which means it's the Jaeger around the corner who's just flipped the cap circle at Charlie, and that's who the radio location skill is pointing at. This of course means that, to all practical intents and purposes, Swamp Beast, as well as being nearly 400 points behind, is now basically the only surviving member of his team. I realise that technically there is still a Shimakaze, but as we've already determined, and as everybody continues to argue about in chat, he is no use to the team alive. And there's the Jaeger. This is really bad news for the Jaeger, by the way, because he's radared. And he's not right at the outer limits of radar range. Now, the Jaeger is pretty quick, and you can tell he's trying to get out of there by pulling the turn and popping the engine boost. But the Des Moines isn't exactly slow, and he's got a couple of kilometres of radar grace on him, and these guns take no prisoners. There are probably torpedoes on the way because it's a Jaeger, so of course there are, but he isn't getting out of this one, and there's kill number 6. Meanwhile, the raging and gaslighting going on in chat between the Smolensk and the Ibuki is actually getting kind of funny, as the subject of their ire, the Shimakaze over there, just continues to randomly herp-a-derp his way around, blundering into the Surveyor, and ensuring that, well, up until now, Swamp Beast had been the only practical member of the team left alive, and now he's the only actual member of the team left alive. And he is once again spotted. That can only mean Shimakaze. He's in the channel somewhere. Radio locations pointing in the general direction. There he is. Radar's on cooldown, but Hydro is not. Yeah, just get a little bit closer. The smoke ain't gonna save you. And that is all 3 of his torpedo launchers, which means the Shimakaze just brought an empty torpedo tube to a gunfight. It was at this point that the Shimakaze knew he'd fucked up. Just bend over, grab your ankles, kiss your ass goodbye. I promise it won't hurt for long. Kill number 7. And the caps are even, although the points very definitely are not. The enemy team have a 360-ish point lead, and they're less than 150 points away from winning with 2 cap circles. All is now going to depend on what that enemy surveyor does. And the radio location skill is pointing to the east, which means he is circling around after sinking the Shimakaze, and he's going to start flipping that cap at Delta. And remember, just in case you didn't already know, yes, Surveyor has torpedoes. One's not too bad. They're European torpedoes, they don't do a whole lot of damage. Also remember, Surveyor has radar, so now he knows exactly where Swamp Beast is going and what he's doing. And unfortunately, the Surveyor, like the Des Moines, is a fast cruiser. And I don't know if it's faster than the Des Moines, but it might be, which is really, really bad news. But it's at least as fast as the Des Moines, which, if the Surveyor is capable of thinking and breathing at the same time, is also really, really bad news, because he doesn't actually have to do anything when he's sitting there on 919 points. With 2 cap circles, he's threatening to take a third. He's basically about a minute and a half away from winning. There's only 2.5 minutes of the game left. So all the Surveyor has to do is just continue doing what he's doing, just keep kiting away. He knows which way Swamp Beast has to go in order to try to catch him, because Swamp Beast has to try to catch him. He has to sink him to win. The Surveyor just has to stay alive in order to win. And he can keep popping that short-term radar, which he is doing, in order to keep tabs on Swamp Beast's location and basically permanently stay ahead of him. Meanwhile, chat just escalated, as the Smolensk is calling the Ibuki a snitch for revealing the location of the Shimakaze to the enemy team. Now, let me remind you, playing a Shimakaze very, very badly is not actually a violation of the game rules. Reporting the position of live teammates to the enemy team in chat, however, is. Now, I don't know whether this Ibuki thinks that everybody's stupid or if he's just being a troll of epic proportions, but he's insisting that he never did that. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, allow me to draw your attention to Exhibit A. He absolutely did. But his blanket denials are absolutely enraging the Smolensk. Meanwhile, Swamp Beast has more important things to worry about. He has spotted the Surveyor. Now, everybody here expected the Surveyor to simply duck into cover behind the island. But instead of doing that, he turns and starts kiting away. Now, I have no doubt that some of you are thinking, and at least one person in battle chat was also thinking, what the hell was the Surveyor doing? He was almost in cover. Why did he turn and start kiting away? There is actually a method to the Surveyor's madness, because this is a Des Moines, and it did have armour piercing loaded, and the Surveyor's a light cruiser, and the Des Moines could have absolutely paddled the shit out of it, given a broadside to shoot at. So instead, the Surveyor simply takes the money and runs, forcing Swamp Beast to switch to the high explosive, winning, and dying anyway, but too late for it to make any difference. Which means that with 8 kills, and with no surviving ships on the enemy team, Swamp Beast actually loses this battle in the Des Moines with, wait for it, 2,321 base experience, only 400 less than the Surveyor, and better by far than anybody on the winning team got for, winning. Well, you know what they say, no good deed goes unpunished. I believe that Swamp Beast is currently in the market for a new monitor after he planted his keyboard into his existing one. And honestly, who could blame him? But I hope you enjoyed watching him suffer, because that is it for today. As always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.